Hi, everyone. My name is Mariana Ramirez. I'm the Manager of Strategic Initiatives here at the Frost Art Museum, and I'd like to welcome you all here today for a conversation with Nadege Green, Terence Price II, and Faren Humes. I know we have a lot of guests that have come across from Miami, members of the MLK committee, members of the museum, as well as students from Dr. Frazier's classes. Thank you, everyone, for spending your afternoon with us. I'd like to thank our director, Dr. Jordana Pomeroy, for giving us the opportunity to build the exhibition and program, as well as her great suggestion to reach out to Nadege Green. Jordana was driving to Tampa last November when she heard Nadege Green's three-part series called There Goes the Neighborhood, Miami on the radio. Later that day, I received a cryptic email message with the subject line, "We need Nadege." I've worked with Jordana for almost 5 years now and knew immediately that she wanted us to get Nadege Green for our panel in February. So thank you. Today's panel is supported by the Florida Humanities with funds from the National Endowment for the Arts. We rely on grant funding to expand our programming, and for those of you who have not partaken in the joy of applying for a grant, part of that process is demonstrating the impact we have on our community. You all can help us secure future grants by completing the evaluations that were on your seats. My colleagues and I will be especially appreciative if you leave us written comments. I co-curated this exhibition, Terence Price II, Never Ending Gardens, which is outside, with my colleague, our chief curator, Dr. Amy Galpin. You'll hear from Amy shortly, but I'd like to thank her for her guidance and support throughout the process of curating this show. I'd also like to thank Terrence for being a wonderful collaborator and artist. This exhibition is part of FIU's 29th annual Dr. Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. commemorative celebration, which honors the legacy of Dr. King through events held across FIU's campuses. We are very grateful for the opportunity to take part in the celebration and offer our community art that serves as a catalyst for dialogue on issues of social justice, civil rights, and humanity. I would especially like to thank Dr. Kalei Mathie for founding this series and really being a huge supporter for us throughout the year, but especially for this series. Thank you, Kalei. Now, I'd like to also thank members of the Frost Art Museum for their continued support. And I would urge you to become a member if you are not already. And if you join today, you'll receive general admission or VIP tickets to Art Wynwood. I would also like to thank FIU's College of Communication, Architecture, and the Arts, the Herbert Wertheim College of Medicine, Robert Stempel College of Public Health and Social Work, and Multicultural Programs and Services for their support for Terence Price II, Never Ending Gardens. We also received a generous grant from Oolite Arts for the exhibition. Oolite Arts has been supporting culture in Miami for 3 decades by providing resources to artists and offering programming to the community at large. I'd like to ask Angelica Arbeláez, Oolite's programs coordinator, to come up here and say a few words.
Thank you, Mariana. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Angelica Arbeláez. I am the programs coordinator at Oolite Arts. I'm so pleased to be here at the Patricia and Philip Frost Art Museum to celebrate Terence Price II, Never Ending Gardens. But before I continue, I just want to say a quick note that I am an FIU alum, and I think it's very special for me to be here and see, my alma mater and my workplace kind of come together in this really wonderful way. For those of you who aren't familiar with Oolite Arts, and Mariana actually gave us a really nice introduction, but we are one of Miami's largest support organizations for visual artists. We were formerly known as Art Center South Florida, but we are known as both a community and a resource. We provide artists with free studio space, exhibition opportunities, professional development, and the financial support that they need to advance their careers. We first met Terence in 2018 when he was selected to participate in our studio residency program. Like many of you sitting in this room today, we quickly recognized Terrence's brilliance, his commitment to his craft, and the immense love that he has for his community. Last year, Terrence worked closely with Diana Nowie, who curated his first solo exhibition, Dancing in the Absence of Pain. The show featured recent and new photographs, as well as 2 new films, which were focused on his grandparents and immediate family. This was an incredible moment for Terrence. The opening reception was a tremendous success and a testament to how beloved he is to his community. The exhibition was also one of our most well-attended and received a fantastic review in Art in America, which is not bad for your first solo. Terrence, I believe you're positioned to become one of the leading voices of our city and also our generation. And Oolite is proud to continue to support you, especially in your first solo museum exhibition. I also want to congratulate Amy and Mariana for organizing a thoughtful and compelling presentation of Terrence's work and for the remarkable programming that they continue to do here at the Frost. And with that, I'll pass it over to Amy.
Thank you so much, Mariana and Angelica. I'm going to go ahead. I don't want to let you wait any longer and just introduce our esteemed speakers today. Terrence Price is an artist and filmmaker born in Carroll City, Florida. His use of street photography is a form of documentation which portrays family life and the surrounding community. While roaming the streets of Miami, he aims to capture moments that move him deeply and invite the viewer to share in this experience. Terrence, as Angie just said, has shown at Oolite Arts, Piero Acciagari Gallery, and in the Commuter Biennial. He has been featured in Art in America, Burn Away, The New Tropic, Miami New Times, among other publications. Alongside Terrence on our panel today, we're thrilled to welcome Faren Humes. Her work has screened at the Miami Film Festival, Black Star Film Festival, New Orleans Film Festival, Pan-African Film Festival, Chicago International Film Festival, and the Mobile Museum of Art, with recognition from the Directors Guild of America and the Television Academy of Arts and Sciences. Her latest work, Liberty, is the jury award winner for Best Short at the Berlinale Generation 14, South by Southwest, and Miami Film Festival. She is the recipient of the Sundance Night Fellowship, the Film Independent Project Involve Directing Fellowship, the Chaz and Robert Ebert Fellowship, and also a fellowship from Borscht. She was named one of Miami's top 100 creatives by the Miami New Times. Nadege Green covers social justice issues for WLRN. Her work has received numerous awards, including a 2017 Regional Edward R. Murrow Award, 2016 First Place Investigative Reporting Award from the National Association of Black Journalists, and Florida AP Broadcaster Awards. In 2018, Green was recognized by the Miami Foundation with the Ruth Shack Leadership Award for her body of work that gives voice to communities that are not often heard. Green's reporting has appeared in the Miami Herald, NPR, and PRI. Her work has also been cited in Teen Vogue, The Root, Refinery 29, and the Washington Post. And it's my pleasure to welcome Terence, Faren, and Nadege.
Greetings, I'm Nadege Green. Before we start the conversation, we are going to play snippets from both Faren and Terrence's work, just to give you some context if you've not engaged with their work yet, on what the conversation is going to be about. This is Faren's work, Liberty.
My mom said I gotta go at the tryouts there. I told her I was ready. Yeah, but we gotta unpack and stuff. Don't you want to unpack? No. Yeah, we should everything straight. Oh, okay.
All right, y'all. Come on. Alice, come on. Let me see you. Come on, Rhea. Let's go. I want to see y'all back. Come on. Okay, Rhea, that's enough. Loggy, let's go. Come on. We don't got all day. Let's go. Loggy, let's go. Come on, Loggy. Let's go, Loggy. Let's go, Loggy. Come on, y'all. Yes. Let's go, Loggy. Come on, let's go. Yes, please. Come on, y'all, let's go. Come on. Let's go. Okay, that's enough. Alex. Loggy. Both of them. All right.
Thank you. I'm just doing this because you're here.
There's really nothing happening, but the kids out of school and they.
I don't see too many of them out today.
That's cause they wait till.
They're too hot, huh?
No, they wait till after dark and then they want to come out and aggravate people.
I was never
Good afternoon, ladies. Go ahead. Where you been, Mama? I haven't seen you.
We ain't got about you.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, we've been gone for like a month.
Hey, look at them bad boys. They just bad. All of them. Where their parents at? I just wonder where their parents at. No, but they have been up in the mango tree and got all the mangoes. Like they couldn't even wait till they got ripe. Thank you.
Photograph going on?
Yeah, no. You ain't got about sugar and Kool-Aid and all that to make a frozen cookie. But you do.
What you working on for?
Somebody moved in Memorial.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was in front of the door. She mad. She going down.
We work hard on the move down there for so long.
Yeah.
We're gonna take it up.
Come on, you know that door lock.
So that first piece was by Faren, and the second was by Terrence. I'm going to open with just asking both of you the same question, which is, can you just talk a little bit about the perceptions of the communities that you explored through your work for you, Carol City and Liberty City, and what you sought to portray as you were, Terrence, photographing and filming the community, and Faren while you were creating Liberty?
Hello. Well, usually I don't really go out with a plan like when I go to photograph the community. A lot of the pictures in the exhibit are a collection from a span of about maybe 8, 6, 7 years, maybe about 7 years. But when I go out there, I try to find. I'm sorry, I'm a little nervous, trying to get the nerves out. I go out there and I don't seek something in particular, but I do try to understand the importance of like representation, and also not trying to take the images to like exploit. And when I go out to photograph, I'm usually following the same footsteps that I do the previous time I go out. And I don't know. I try to allow whatever's going on to naturally come my way. And
can you say more on the perception of Carol City from an outsider perspective and as you see it?
An outside perspective, a lot of people don't even know what Carol City is. A lot of people know what Miami Gardens is and not Carol City because of the change that happened in 2003. So a lot of people, when they first think about Carol City, they always think about what they see in the news, like the violence and everything. But I try to show in my images that there's a lot more than that. And so even the erasure of Carol City and what the community is trying to do as far as Miami Gardens now, and like just thinking about how it's like this new phase of what it should be. So a lot of people still have like this old perception of like what Carol City is. So in my photos, I do try to like, I don't know, share a different insight, a more intimate relationship with my subjects or even my family. Yeah.
So for background, Carol City is a neighborhood in Miami Gardens. Miami Gardens incorporated in 2003. It's very much like City of Miami has many neighborhoods, and people recognize that. You have Liberty City, Little Haiti, Coconut Grove. Miami Gardens is the third largest city in Miami-Dade County. So there are many neighborhoods in Miami Gardens, including Carol City, Norwood, Coconut Cay. But the perception of Miami Gardens is just this one bucket, right? Most of us can't afford a home in Coconut Cay in Miami Gardens. So the idea of, you talk about erasure, like the idea of the community and the communities having names, and within Carol City, there is something there that's different from, let's say, Norland. Faren, can you say more on your film Liberty, and same thing on the perception on Liberty City, and specifically where you filmed, because this was all filmed in Liberty Square, which is the oldest housing project in the country after the New Deal, and it is about to be torn down, and parts of it already has been.
Okay. Well, when the county announced, I think around 2015, that they were going to tear down the building into phases, immediately where my mind went was, I started asking questions about, because I knew that Liberty Square was the oldest and largest housing complex in the Southeast. So I had questions of what's going to happen to this community and these longstanding bonds. And in terms of perception, that's been my experience with the people that I know there. And when I go there, it's, everyone knows each other. And it is a place where everyone knows each other. And it is a, don't cover it. Yeah. You're an expert. I'm an audio person. Okay. It is very communal. It is the type of place where a neighbor will go and run an errand and have a child go and pick up some flour from the next door neighbor, but that's also something that is not as prominent in the media. So it was a thought to counter that narrative with a storyline that really looked at intimately the bonds of two longtime neighbors.
Both of your work explored the idea of intimacy in different ways. And I'd love for you to talk a little bit more about that, because I see a lot of Black love in both of your work. For sure, Faren, at the end, when Loggie is getting her hair conditioned, it's always an intimate experience for a Black woman when someone is braiding your hair, unbraiding your hair, greasing your scalp, right? Like, that is a moment. And for you, Terrence, as well, because you're literally, in some of your work, going through your own personal narrative, exploring baptisms. But also, there's a lot of, like, man love, right? Like when you're with your friends and, like, you have the trio. There's a video of a trio of men, all of whom have wicks, also known as dreads or freeform locks, as the Google calls it. But but in Miami they're wicks. But can you talk a little about the intimacy that you capture? That isn't always frontward facing, that there is that touch, that love that is happening in the communities that you are in, and it looks different depending on what the situation is.
The piece that Nadege is talking about is called Untamed, and it's in the main space over here. It was a collaboration project with me and Margot Hanna. Margot approached me about the project because she wanted to create a piece that talks about dukes, wigs, about the hair, and like the beauty of it just naturally growing out. And originally it was supposed to be just photos, but I felt like I could do something more with video. And again, it just all boils back down to like the perception that people have of the hair. I have a lot of friends who have locks, wigs, and I don't see them in that way. But somebody from the outside, of course, will see them in a different light. And I even get approached about that to the video piece, where if you put on the headphones, you listen to a friend of mine's, Reginald O'Neill, who's here, painter, and he speaks on it. And the words are beautiful and it's telling you exactly what it is. But like, if nobody's gonna listen to the words and then understand the video, they easily have this whole perception of it, of like, they come to me and they ask me like, who let you in the prison? Like, how did you get into the prison? Or are these young men in a gang? And then that's when I'm like,
they're my neighbors. Like,
yeah, this is my best friend. The other dude, he's an artist. The other one is a photographer. So just thinking about that and how sometimes there's not, like when I'm shooting it, I'm not really thinking about, oh, I have to break down this narrative. But I know it comes off that way and I have to, let it be known or whatever. I don't know if I'm rambling.
What about you, Faren?
I forgot the question. Was it?
When you, well, I'll actually ask you a different, well, since you touched on this actually, and I love the idea of the explanatory comma, having to explain your work. Sometimes you put the work out there and you're like, this is what it is, right? But there is a certain vernacular in everyone's work, and not everyone is going to understand that, right? But you're like, but engage with it no less. Because I know, being from Black Miami, there are things in your work that I'm like, oh my God, there's a frozen cup, or, like I know this. Like I've been to the the pork and beans. I can't even say that. It's like the poke and beans, right? It's the beans. But but it intimately. Like I know it different. But someone from the outside, or someone who's never been, we can be in Miami, and I always say this: Miami's very segregated. This is a fact that you can live 15 minutes away from a neighborhood and have never stepped foot there. You can live in Brickell and never go to Overtown. You can live in Miami Lakes and never go to Miami Gardens, or Aventura and never go to Miami Gardens, and they're neighbors, right? So when you're working on this and like you present the work, can you talk about like that explanatory comma, the need to or not needing to explain what this all is?
I try my best to stay centered on my own voice, in terms of art and anything extending beyond that. And I also feel like that's the best way to, if you intend to counter, that doesn't have to be, your goal or an intention as an artist. But I do feel that specificity is a natural way to counter some, normative values that are out there. So that's what I always try to remind myself when I'm, coming up with stories and, constantly questioning my lens as I'm drafting the storyline for these pieces set in communities that often get a bad rap. I just try to stay very much filtered in and centered on my voice and making sure that, not making sure, but when there are instances of specificity, I almost look at that as something that can't be decoded and a way that can sort of like be archived and not taken or co-opted because it sort of goes under the radar. So as specific as possible.
Yeah, just thinking about counter visuality and how to change that whole narrative. Because if I don't do it, my role as an artist is to go out there and to do that and to shed some type of light. And if I don't do that, I feel like somebody else will. And then their perspective could be totally different. And then that goes on to talk about the gaze and what the gaze means. And so just thinking about that is like, I have to like use this tool, this camera as this object to like be this barricade against somebody else's perspective for putting these things out there. So.
And one of the things that I notice in both of your work that I love is that, a lot of times when you engage with art, especially art in the Black community or even news in the Black community, what typically rises to the top is trauma, right? Like there's a lot of Black pain, and certainly we've experienced a lot of pain. But there's just so much joy, from the dancers to Terrence. Your entire body of work really centers joy. There's a photo of yours in your earlier exhibit with the little boy with the Ninja Turtle, costume on. Can you talk about just centering joy in the work that you're doing?
I don't know.
You read it as joy. I certainly.
No, I do read it as joy, but sometimes it does come from a place like of a lot of sorrow. Like the pictures of my family that came from the passing of my grandfather, and I had to like flip that into like some type of light situation where it was also a challenge for me to like get past. And the boy with the mask, that was like a joyful moment. And I took the picture of the kid and I printed it out, showed it in the show, and I recently went back and gave the same photo to the kid. So that way he can have that photo. And then seeing him light up with joy, and then also me like thinking about how long did this kid stare at that photo like all night, like, wow, this person gave me this, or da-da-da-da-da. So it's like, I don't know. There's just always some type of, there has to be like some type of balance between both. like it's real easy to show the sorrows and the gun violence and everything, but I guess I like to, well, not like to, that sounds dark, but I do tend to dance around like the after effects of everything. And that's where like the whole dancing in the absence of pain came from, because it's like you got to find the things that keep us like going on and going forward and everything. So I don't know if that answers.
For me, I've always been attracted to naturalist and realist depictions of the community. So my goal is to mirror it as much as possible, what I'm seeing, what I'm experiencing in the different neighborhoods that I come from, that I'm visiting, and respect my lens and try and come up with a storyline that speaks to whatever issues, challenges, or historical context that's going on. So for me, like as Terrence said, there's a balance because there is always joy where there is sorrow as well. So I just try to be in service to that, I guess, as best as I can. So in Liberty, tonally, it very much feels there's a weight to it that's coming from the context, the environmental context. We see the contractors and the buildings towering. Yeah, and the RIP memorials that you see trickled about that are actually confiscated now. But there's also, spurts and interpolations of joy because that's what life is. It's these ups and downs. So I just try to be as accurate as I see it and not have my personal biases interrupt that.
So we're going to open this up to you all to ask questions, but I'm going to ask one more question before we do that, and that is since we're in a museum, let's talk archiving. I am a huge lover of archives because so many things, especially in our community, in the Black community, historically has not been archived and still does not get archived, right? Like what is worthy of collecting, what is worthy of documenting is certainly a question that I think all institutions should grapple with. But in your work, you're doing that, right? Like you are archiving Liberty Square before it no longer looks like what it looks now. You're archiving, Carroll City, but in doing that, you're also documenting loss, like what is no longer there in the community. From Carroll Mart, if you'll talk a little bit about that, and Faren, Liberty Square. I mean, since you've been there when you were filming, it no longer looks like what it was even then.
Well, Carroll Mart, the Carroll City Flea Market, has always been this mecca, like in Carroll City. You have all these important buildings all around the world, monuments. People travel all over the world to go to take a selfie in front of or whatever. But Carroll Mart was like that for a lot of people. And I remember the day I was walking, I saw it was gated. And this was not too long ago after I had shot a video in front of it, but it was gated off. And I always had, like in my mind, this project that I wanted to do at Carroll Mart. I wanted to go in there and take pictures of all of the Black-owned businesses and everything. And when it disappeared, it hurt a lot. And I don't think people really understand like the power that space had. And then now it's like a Burlington Coat Factory, a Ross, and everything. So you just think about like the idea of memory, and like I wasn't able to like archive anything, so I'm dealing with a great loss from that. And then you have the people that were working in there and like using that place to survive, and then now they have a great loss. So it's like they get taken away from that. So now do they go apply to Burlington Coat Factories and stuff because they're in that neighborhood? Or I don't know, going too much about it. But I just think that it does have like a huge effect on the community, because You know, even riding past there, I don't even look at it no more. And I'm not doing that on purpose. It's because I just know that something's gone from there. Like there's still something there and I can look, but I don't look because I know it's gone. So I can't imagine what that's doing for a lot of people like around the area.
I don't know. I kind of feel like just because there's so much redevelopment going on everywhere nationally, it almost feels like a small miracle when I can go to a neighborhood and like the act of Black people amassing still, that is like, it feels like a lost treasure now. So yeah, I do feel it's important to archive in every sense, like with the film, but the dialect of Liberty City, which is what we're talking about, which is very different from obviously Little Haiti or Miami Gardens, but the customs there, the little parties that and dance offs that happen in the terrace. So I don't know, for me, it's just seeing value in these communities and giving credence to the personal value that you ascribe to those places. And if you deem it so, then archive it however you see fit.
And it's funny because all three of us are from Miami, and I laughed. I was like, this is the first panel I've been on where everyone on the panel is from Miami. So that hit different. But I also echo Terrence's loss. But on the other end, USA Flea Market is no longer standing either. And I mourned the loss of USA Flea Market. The day before USA Flea Market closed, I actually walked through there with a camera and like took photos and was like, I can't believe it's not standing. And like last week, they bulldozed it completely. So, but again, these are not places that people would look to, and you know, the Historic Preservation Board is not going to say, save USA Flea Market. No one is going to show up with protest signs and say, you know, we must keep the flea market here, as we do with certain trees. But the reality of it is it does matter for the community that it's in. I mean, the USA Flea Market, I think flea markets were like co-working spaces before co-working spaces were a thing, right? It's a whole bunch of booths inside one place where a whole bunch of people are paying rent to pay the overhead costs, right? It was a co-working space. If you were a good barber in Miami, you started at one of these flea markets, and then you got your brick and mortar, but that is where you trained. Apprenticeship happened in these spaces. If you got your nails done, all the major nail techs that are on Instagram and now work with celebrities got their starts in these flea markets. It's entrepreneurship, right? All of your favorite rappers from Miami, including Pitbull, had to go through the flea market if they were going to make it, right? So it was music, it was all of these things. But if you're not in the community, you don't recognize the value of these spaces. And also, these were democratic spaces. Like you could be a 16-year-old getting your nails done, sitting next to someone's grandma, sitting next to the pastor's wife, sitting next to a drag queen, getting their nails done for the club, and like everyone is in there, right? Like that is happening. Those are special places in the community.
That helps things keep moving forward and to break barriers around our own neighbors, you know? Like, yeah, I don't know where I was going with that. But yeah, it breaks those barriers down, you know?
Also, the idea that Black Miami is not a monolith. You can go to Coconut Grove and it's a different vibe. You can go to Perrine and Ghouls and it's a different vibe. You go up to Miami Gardens, it's a different vibe. Little Haiti sounds different than Liberty City, and they're just 2 minutes away from each other. And so it is very real that like every neighborhood is very unique, and brings something to the fabric of Miami. But on that note, would love to hear from you all and your questions you have for the amazing artists up here.
Hi, Nadege.
Hi, hey.
What's up?
WLRN intern.
I had two questions, one for each. First off, for Terrence, it's more of like a nerd photographer question, and I kind of ask it to a lot of photographers: is why the choice of black and white? I could ask the other question too.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't set the rules. One question, because we want everyone. Look, sorry. We want everyone to get their questions in, and if you have a comment, save it during the meet and greet. So ask one question. Sorry.
It's okay. No love. I'll ask the other question. You can answer the other one later. Uh, um, I was wondering about like the accumulation of tension in the short film Liberty. When the girls are having their dance, I think like a cop car rolls in the back. When she goes in to the woman's house, the developers are there. Even in the relationship between the two girls, there's tension on a personal level. But can you talk about that tension more that you feel like institutionally, I guess?
I can go first. I guess the tension that you felt is also very much in tandem with like, the encroaching and impending redevelopment that is happening. So sound plays a huge part in, being like this nagging presence, which is something that, I just tried to sensationally set up in the film. So story-wise, we're dealing with two longtime neighbors who are dealing with a disruption in their friendship because one is relocating because of the redevelopment. And that's about all the context that we're given, because again, about specificity, I wanted this story to resonate, first and foremost and solely for the residents of Liberty Square, the stakeholders of Liberty Square. So that's all I needed to say. These are two people who have known each other for most of their lives, and one is parting. And I just wanted to bolster that small bit of information with how we feel, because my thought process was, historians, activists, artists, denizens, everyone, we can talk ourselves, to we're like black and blue in the face cognitively in terms of info, trying to convince people about the work of Black lives and these historical communities. So I wanted to bypass that and really make us feel what that feels like. So that's why we have these elongated shots that really try to have sensational resonance. I'm not trying to argue with facts anymore, because that can be disputed, and we're not getting political here. So, but in my thought, you really cannot, it's hard to dispute a feeling, the senses. You can't really lie with that. So I wanted to situate my audience in the presence of displacement, disruption of these longstanding bonds. So that's why you have like all this like oral chaos and long takes and very sensual moments with the hair to really situate us in it. Sorry, all my gesticulations.
Terrence with the Black Police Precinct, Courthouse Museum. I'm so glad to be here, my alma mater. Can you tell me how you all ended up backing into academia? Oftentimes it's easier to come and be in a class and do this work, but you all have actually backed into this work from the community, and how you were able to grapple with this, where you have these scholars and photographers who teach, and we do all these museum work, and now we're coming to you to give us the street smarts and the eloquence behind this work that you've done.
I guess, I don't have like a big answer for it, but I guess it's like, I don't know, like we're out here doing the work that a lot of the professors and stuff are like talking about or preaching about. Like we're the ones that's actually taking something from every day to add into our whole creative process. In Faren's film, the sound of destruction, something that a lot of us wake up to every morning. A lot of us read about in the paper all the time. So all of that fuels into our creative process, because when we're in that creative state, we're like a sponge. So everything attaches to us and becomes something for this next creative explosion or whatever. So I feel like us going back to academia is pretty much like us breaking down what we've already learned that isn't really helping us that much. So we have to like dig constantly through anything. And it could be like reading a James Baldwin book, you know. It may not be the typical professor in FIU or but within the work that was laid out, there's the pieces for us to like dig through. So that becomes like putting us on this academia stage because we're curious just as much as everybody else is. But us being creative and doing the work that we do, we have to like find a solution. So without digging and reading and everything, it becomes, I don't know, it'll just become not as meaningful, I guess. I don't know. But when we've taught classes, kids, talked to kids and everything. So I don't know if I'm making too much sense. I'm probably just rambling. No.
Hi. Before I ask the question, I would like to commend you both on being strong voices and insights into our community. And since I only have one question, I'll ask this question for both of you. Could you give us some insight about your influences and be specific about your influences, like maybe related to decades as you were growing up to now, you know, contemporary to past, and perhaps maybe some political influences, some musical influences. Just go for it, okay?
We're all laughing because that's my dad. And I'm like, why are you doing this?
Proud dad.
He gets a pass because it's their anniversary, their 44th anniversary to this day. Creative influences. I try, you know, filmmakers for sure. Filmmakers that work with time and take their time with their cinema and sort of let actions, both extraordinary and mundane, they just let them play out. I mean, yeah. So like Ingmar Bergman and Sissako Abdurrahman Sissako, he's a filmmaker who does a lot of films based in Mali. And he's also very community-based as well. So his stories, he forms his stories, but they're very much crafted and molded, and they shift and they shape according to the goings-on of the community. So he's been a huge inspiration for me. His last two films, Timbuktu and Bamako, they do just that. And they center Blackness, so it's just everything that I'm about. And then, you know, outside of filmmakers, I also try to just have like interdisciplinary influences as well. So dancers that break rules and artists. We were just at another panel last week, and I spoke of Kendrick Lamar and Solange. Solange specifically with her last album, just because it, you know, it breaks rules with forms, and you can tell that she's not afraid to experiment. Poets are usually very helpful for me as I try to challenge myself to sort of break hard set narrative forms that I've been taught. You know, I'm in this unlearning process, so I use poetry to do that. So Rita Dove and Amiri Baraka and Gil Scott Heron and all those people that we know, but people who are irreverent to the rules, I try to, whichever discipline or genre they work in, if you are irreverent in that way and in service to your own voice, I usually am attracted to that artist.
I have to say the same as Faren. Like, I do get a lot of my influences from music, all forms of art. I like listening to jazz a lot. Beats from producers I like. on the way here, I was listening to Gil Scott's Heron. So just things that keep me not straying too far away from what I'm trying to continue to create and put out. As far as photographers, there's Gordon Parks, Jamel Shabazz, Roy De Carava, and people are always telling me about some other photographer that I should check out, so I checked them out. I don't know, because there's so much, and like even not on a artistic level, like my grandfather too, and my grandmother, just the way that they put family photos on the wall in the home and inside their home, the way my grandfather documented all of our family gatherings. So that too is like influence. And then I just dig through those family albums and pictures and stuff to like come back into now to see like how could I use that to help me navigate through the spaces now of like what it is. And so that helps out a lot too.
You have another question?
Right. So again, before your father commended the panel, it was an excellent panel, and I love your work. And so my question to both of you is, you both do short. You're doing short film. So do you think that's best for what you want to convey?
I think so, because a picture is a flat image, and of course, you can go off imagination of what happened in this photo or whatever. But I just feel like short films and films have like there's like more time to tell everything, but it has to be, I guess it has to be done right. I don't know if I'm making much sense, but yeah, I feel like short films do help, and it's also to me like a blank canvas. Short films, because I feel like as far as black films, I think the short films are like more experimental than the films that are in Hollywood that's not really pushing things forward. So I appreciate those like Faren and seeing Liberty, because it helps me get a more understanding of like myself in the film. So yeah.
Yes, I like shorts and I respect them as a form, a genre. But my doing short films have definitely been practical or practically based in terms of funding. So luckily with Liberty, like it did well, and it's been able to garner some support. So we're going to make a feature-length version of it this year. Terrence is actually DPing it, so it will be. I think that's all I had to say about it.
Okay. Do we have any questions from Dr. Fraser's class or any FIU students coming?
Yes, first of all, thank you so much for sharing your works with us. I wanted to ask you, are there any specific perceptions you would like to portray besides the typical stereotypes that you'd like to see translate as a result of your work?
I'm very interested in connectedness and communal experiences amongst Black folk, specifically Southern Black communities, because that's where I'm from. And the more films that I make, I'm starting to see that that's the through line between all of them. Because that's what's important to me, and I also feel like that it's critical to, Black expansiveness and progress, a high sense of connectedness. I think all forms of organizing are birthed out of that, a sense of belonging and connectedness. So when you see these tender and intimate moments, I'm really just, again, trying to sort of like imbue the feeling of that. Like, what does it feel like to belong somewhere and be loved and wanted unconditionally by people who look like you and would like healthily amongst, the most terrible conditions and also in utopians. But I just want that to be felt in hopes of generating more of it in a near reality.
Me, I'm gonna continue to take pictures the way I do. But I'm processed now. I've been digging a lot through my grandparents' photos and family photos, and also talking to a few friends to go through their family photos to bring those forward into light. So that way, it helps. Again, it helps us like navigate more through like what's going on now. The whole idea of Sankofa, thinking about that and talking about with photographs. I read a quote from somewhere the other day, which was like going back helps us like go forward, and then also thinking about going back helps the past able to like transcend. So yeah, I'm gonna keep going through these archives and stuff to like really talk about Miami and like people's history, like traveling in Miami. Yeah.
Okay, I think we have time for one more question.
Hi, I was just wondering if any of your work would ever get political in any sense, like if you guys would dabble into that.
With our work?
Yeah.
Yes.
Could you elaborate like a little more on how you could see it getting political?
Well, it's kind of...
Well, okay.
Yes. So yes from me too.
All right. I think I'd like to thank everyone here. We have a reception at the terrace. I invite you, I'm sure that we have more questions. I invite everyone to go out to our terrace where we have wine and drinks. And thank you all so much. And I'd like to thank our panelists. Can we give a round of applause?